welcome to Bad Boy Cinema. I'm your host, Rick Reel, and this week we are going to be discussing the latest Yorgos L film, Kinds of Kindness. And what a picture this was in many ways. And to get it off, get it started right off the bat here. This is a 2 stars at no like, maybe 2.5. Yeah, let's say 2.5 and at no like for Kinds of Kindness. And what I guess logistically to talk about the movie in order to really like discuss it and analyze it, we kind of have to go through the different pieces of the composition of it, right? So it's a 3 short stories kind of in one movie. The movie itself is 164 minutes. And I think it's pretty evenly distributed, that 164 between each of the 3 stories. But to get into who's playing who, that's a little bit more complicated, right? So all the actors, well, almost all the actors, we'll get to that in a minute, don't you worry, but almost all the actors are playing different characters within each of the short stories. So you'll have, Emma Stone playing 3 different people. You'll have Jesse Plemons playing 3 different people, each for the stories. Margaret Qualley, or however you say her name, she's playing 4 people just to keep you a little confused, right? Arguably, there's one character who's only playing the same guy in all 3 parts. It's a little iffy. It's a little squirrely, right? Now, I went to the theater today and saw it. So these are, and I'm gonna upload this, maybe in like 3 or 4 hours. So these are pretty fresh takes. These are pretty hot off the presses. And I took a piece of paper, like one larger. It's larger than a 16:9, I think. Is that normal paper size? Maybe it is 16:9. I'm just not very bright. But I brought a piece of paper to take notes at the theater. And so I just kind of want to go through these notes and then kind of go through the logistics of the film before kind of getting into my actual opinions of it in a more concrete and meaningful way. Right, but 2 stars, no like, so clearly I didn't love it. It's interesting. Well, we'll get into it. Again, it's hard to talk about the movie without either having seen it and so having a frame of reference. But I'm spoilers ahead, right? So if you haven't seen it, you're really curious about this movie. See it first, right? The podcast episode will always be there for you. But I'm gonna have to try and describe this and kind of go through each of the 3 plots in a lot of detail because I can't just say, Emma Stone did this. Which Emma Stone am I talking about, right? So I have to kind of talk about each thing individually and then sort of, unpack kind of themes and kind of overarching ideas between each of the 3 stories in the film. But, so I'm just going to go through my notes here. So I saw it at Alamo Drafthouse, and I'm bringing this up just to prove a point, especially for my folks who are largely in the Texas region where there's a lot of Alamo Draft houses relative to the rest of the United States. And this, of course, if you are listening to this and you're not in the United States, then you probably don't have any. So, tip of the hat to you, because then you don't have to deal with how shitty Alamo's gotten in the last. My first time I went to Alamo was 2015 or 2016 or something like that, and the prices for like chips and queso is like $6 because you get like a little bowl of queso and you get like a thing of chips, which are, those cost basically nothing. But now it's like $4 more expensive in today's money, which is stupid. And of note, only I think 3 other people were in the film, like in the theater with me. And they all liked it more than I did. They were laughing. And what they were laughing at we'll get to later. But they were certainly having a better time. Yeah. And then I think the only trailer of note, there was a stupid like British horror movie that they're doing a trailer for called Speak No Evil. And the only funny thing about it is that I'm so cooked, man. I'm so cooked and I'm so locked in on Instagram Reels and the algorithm. And my algorithm is just so destroyed with nonsense meant for like, you know, Gen Alpha kids, right? Like just or people with mental deficiencies, and maybe I have one. I mean, you're listening to this, you can decide for yourself. But you know, there's a chicken nugget that sings like Cotton Eye Joe. You know the song Cotton Eye Joe. We've all heard Cotton Eye Joe before. But there's there's a chicken nugget that sings that, and the chicken nugget, um, he sings it kind of bad. Like that's really it. He sings Cotton Eye Joe poorly, and that's funny, you know, or whatever. And you know they were playing the song in for part of the trailer, like the kids in the garden of this like British house, you know, where the horror happens. These kids were like dancing around a Cotton Eye Joe, and I just thought that was the funniest thing because my brain is ruined. But yeah, Cotton Eye Joe trailer. All the other trailers are stupid. And I'll say this: there was a trailer for Deadpool and Wolverine that was for big kids, and so they're saying fuck a lot. Um, but I'm kind of excited for, like, I hate that I like Deadpool. You know, that's such a like cringe millennial thing to like is Deadpool, but I don't know. I'm kind of excited for the Wolverine and Deadpool movie. I'm sure it's not going to be good, but I think I'll have a fun time. You know, it's 2.5 stars in a like versus not a like. You know what I'm saying? Which this project certainly is. So let's get into kinds of kindness. And let me take a drink of my beverage. If you couldn't tell, this is a solo episode, so this is going to be a little different, a little looser, maybe, or maybe more structured. I don't know. I'm just going to kind of ramble for like 30 minutes, and hopefully we'll go on a journey together, and there will be a destination. But you know, I mean, I took notes. I took notes for this movie. And I didn't like it, and I don't want to do this. And then today I'm enjoying a Simply Spiked limeade that's on an ad, but it's actually pretty good. It's pretty refreshing. Um, what a treat. What a treat. So, and this is important to note based on the lyrics of the song, but you know, the movie opens with the song "Sweet Dream." That's what it's called, right? Sweet Dreams. Sweet Dreams are made of memes. Yeah, by Eurythmics. It opens with that song, and you know, Google the lyrics while you're listening to this. Google the lyrics and just kind of read them. You know, divorced from the sound, and those are basically the themes of the movie. Spoiler alert: that's what the movie's about. And once you figure it out, you're like, oh damn, that's a little on the nose, but also kind of it seems like he listened to that song and was like, what if I made a movie about this? What if I made 3 short movies about this? All right, so the first tale in the kinds of kindness movie, the first of the anthology short stories is the death of RMF, which are initials RMF, and RMF is going to appear as initials in all of the titles of the 3 parts. So just something to keep in mind while I'm talking about this. But basically, Jesse Plemons is just a guy, and he works for Willem Dafoe. And Willem Dafoe, I guess, as a sex thing, question mark, I don't know, but he likes telling people what to do, not like a Dom sub. I mean, maybe a Dom subway, because I think Jesse Plemons and Willem Dafoe do bang. There's a threesome at the end of the story with Willem Dafoe and Margaret Qualley and Jesse Plemons. That's a threesome, right? But you know, I think Willem and Jesse kind of get into it on the side, which is well, I have some thoughts on that too. But you know, it's not like a Dom sub thing, but it's like a, you know, Willem Dafoe's character will, you know, nail Jesse Plemons. He'll give Jesse Plemons a note saying everything that he's gonna do. All there's no decision making on Jesse Plemons' side of things as far as what he's doing day to day. It's all preordained by Willem Dafoe. And so Jesse Plemons does all that, and then Willem Dafoe's like, hey, you need to crash your car into this guy. And then so Jesse Plemons does that. That's how the movie opens, and he doesn't do a good enough job to like send the other guy into the hospital. So Willem Dafoe's like, that's fine. You just in a couple days you're gonna hit him in the car again. And Jesse Plemons is like, I don't want to do that. Like that seems bad. Which fair. As unnatural as this arrangement is, it's a pretty normal thing to not want to hit somebody with a car and kill them. Because that's, Willem Dafoe wants that man dead. And he's like, it's fine. The other guy agreed to it. It's all good. In the beginning of the movie, you see the guy in the guy that Jesse Plemons is going to kill. He is RMF. And Jesse Plemons' initials, I think, are also RMF, or at least RF. Just fun fact. Willem Dafoe's character, his first name is Raymond. So that's R. Is his last name F? I don't know. Who's to say, right? Who's to say? But Jesse Plemons is like, no, I'm not gonna kill a guy. Like, even if he wants to die, even if he agrees to this, like, I'm not fucking doing it. And so Willem Dafoe's like, all right, that's fine, but like, our arrangement is canceled. It's no longer a thing. And I think part of the arrangement is like, Willem Dafoe's character set Jesse Plemons up with a house, like a job, like maybe a wife, even though he was also forbidding Jesse Plemons' wife from having kids. So Jesse Plemons has to like spike her coffee with like abortion pills, which is fucked up, but not even close to like some of the weirder stuff in in this movie. So Jesse Plemons' life, starts falling apart as, the things that Willem Dafoe is deciding on his behalf are no longer being decided on. So, like, Jesse Plemons' life sucks now that he has to make decisions for himself. And eventually, he meets Emma Stone's character, whose initials are also RF. He finds out that Emma Stone's character is also in coordination with Willem Dafoe for the same kind of deal, where Willem Dafoe's character is deciding all stuff for Emma Stone. And then Jesse Plemons eventually decides to, kill the RMF as he was supposed to, hence the title of the film, or of the short story. And then he does, and then he gets back together with Willem Dafoe, and then Margaret Qualley, who is Willem Dafoe's like wife, live-in lover, person, girlfriend, whatever. Vivian is her name, and that's the first. In a nutshell, that's basically the first one, and it's fine. I think I like this one the most because of just the humor of him having everything decided for him, and then his life kind of falling apart, and how desperate he is to get back with this with Willem Dafoe, which is it's such a weird relationship. I don't know why anybody would want to do that, but I guess some people are into that. I don't know. I like just kind of how like the pettiness of like so Willem Dafoe, he like sends over like sports artifacts, for lack of a better word, like trophies, or not literal trophies, but like like a trophy of like a kill, right? You take on like an animal's head or something. It's like that, but like sports. So like broken tennis rackets, or whatever. And so at one point, one of the things that he had given Jesse Plemons, Willem Dafoe like breaks into his house and like takes back, and then Jesse Plemons breaks into Emma Stone's house where he finds the racket, and he takes that back, and it's just very silly. But Willem Dafoe takes it back and ends happy. It's not overly weird, other than the initial premise. It's not that strange. It's fine. It's fine. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm looking at my notes here. Some things to point out is that in this part, our close friend Emily Stone, who we've watched in the previous episode La La Land, as well as in Poor Things, which was Yorgos's previous film that came out last year in 2023, unlike this movie, which came out this year in 2024, a few weeks ago. But she's very normal in this, at least in this, not in the other two parts, but in this part specifically, she's acting very normal. like aggressively normcore. Like I've never seen Emma Stone just play like a regular person to the point where it's a little unsettling. And I'm like, she actually is acting, and for how normal she is, it's got to be pretty hard to pull off. And then there's whenever something like bad happens, which sounds vague, but you know if somebody's about to kill somebody, like when Jesse Plemons is about to kill RMF, or just something unsettling ish happens, but like more unsettling than normal. There's this like chanting sort of no song, like it goes like no like that. I thought that was both annoying and also really funny, and I'm not like I guess you know it's a dark comedy, so I guess that was probably the point, right? But it's so funny. It's so silly. Just the no. It's yeah. I don't know, but it. Oh, maybe if you'll see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's constant, and what's also constant is just like lots of piano like diddling. That's not the word for it, but that's what I'm calling it, piano diddling. It's constant throughout the movie, and in general, gets pretty annoying. But maybe it's not super like it's not super annoying in this first one because I think there's a it's making things seem creepy and more sinister than they actually are to an extent. Like it's not great, but it's you know, and I think that works for it. In the other two parts, there are legitimately creepy and sinister things, and the same piano no chant stuff it kind of feels like overkill. And like some of the stuff that is air quote funny is honestly, I think in poor taste to laugh at. But you know, this is a dark absurdist comedy, and I think this is probably what I should have expected. So a little bit of that might be on me, but we'll see. So the next story, and that again, that was literally just the first story. It's like you know, I'm able to explain that in a way that is makes a lot of sense. You know, it's like, hey, he you know follows Willem Dafoe's orders. His life's great, and then he stops because he's like, I don't want to kill a guy. His life falls apart, and then he goes, okay, I want it back in the game. So he kills the guy. He's back in the game. That's it. It's a pretty simple story, you know. And I think you could probably just by my description of it kind of discern some themes. Again, remember sweet dreams. Remember sweet dreams. All right, folks. Remember sweet dreams because that's what it's all about. Oh my god, my contacts are so dry. You know, you ever have dried out contacts, man? It's really it's grating. I mean, literally grating on your eyeball, but also just like it's exhausting too. Like I feel tired. I probably shouldn't be having a spiked limeade right now, but I mean it's just so darn refreshing on these hot summer days, right? Mm. All right, so that's that part. Um, yeah. Okay, so part two, RMF is flying. And again, same RMF. Think about that. But in this one, Jesse Plemons is still arguably the main character, and he plays a cop, and his wife, who is played by Emma Stone in this one, um, is like some kind of marine biologist who is lost at sea. The movie's she's lost at sea at the start of the this part of the movie, this short story, and so you know, and Jesse Plemons' character comes off a little unsettled already. Like he already seems like kind of an off and weird guy. You know, he's having dinner with his friends, and he's like, "Hey, how about we put on a tape to remember her by?" You know, and in my head, I'm like, "Oh, it's like he wants to like put on a sex tape between just him and Emma Stone, right?" And then the friends will watch, and that's awkward. They're like, "Yeah, we don't want to watch that. Like, it's you know, it's kind of weird, and like it'd be awkward for us." And then they end up watching it anyways, and it's they're swingers, and so they're swapping their partners, and oh, that got a lot of pop. Got a lot of pop. In my notes, I said, "Guy next to me thinks sex is real funny," and I guess yeah, he thought that was really funny. I think I don't know. I was just like, and I think this was an issue with Poor Things too, where it's like you know a point is made or a joke is made, and I'm like, oh, okay, I got it. Haha, yeah, nice. And it just kind of keeps going for a little bit. Um, and so I was like, okay, like I get it. We don't need to see multiple different positions going on with the weird foursome thing. Like I've seen enough of Emma Stone in that in that context for the rest of my life with Poor Things. Maybe following up immediately with this wasn't the move, but whatever. It's good for her. Again, in here I said Emma Stone is Poor Things Part Two. Oh no, that's I'm skipping ahead of myself. So, but basically that's kind of the vibe that we're going into with Jesse Plemons' character. He's already a little off and kind of weird. Again, Jesse Plemons in part one, he was just kind of a loser. Like he was just kind of like a little worm. This Jesse Plemons is actively unwell. Granted, his wife's lost at sea. Of course, who wouldn't be unwell? But it's certainly something, right? What am I doing, man? What am I doing right now? I'm scrolling. Because I got a message on Discord. All right. So anyway, and I'm not editing any of this out. So because I'm going above and beyond for solo episodes. So just keep that noted. Keep that locked in. Even. Okay. So where were we? So eventually, Emily Stone comes back because she was like trapped on a desert island thing. She was found by helicopter, and the guy who was piloting that helicopter is the same guy who Jesse Plemons killed in the previous story, Mr. RMF, for what it's worth. Same guy. And then Emily Stone, is not great because she was on a desert island, but she survived, and it's implied that she survived by being a cannibal, which is weird. And there are a lot of like cannibal undertone things here. Going forward, it's just I'm like, who it's she's eating a person, and you get that vibe, and haha, very funny. And she kind of it describes the epic highs and lows of marine biology. She's I guess so she comes back wrong, not in like a she died and now is different, but maybe the implied cannibalism has changed her preferences and tastes for things, or maybe just a very traumatic experience changes a person and they go from liking chocolate or disliking chocolate cake to liking chocolate cake, as an example in the movie. But Jesse Plemons is noticing these changes and he's like, oh, well, clearly that's not my wife. He's like, clearly that's not my wife and something is wrong. And so he already wasn't doing too great, but he completely mentally spirals out of control. And, by the end of it, he's like not eating. And, Emma Stone's like, please eat. You're going to starve to death. Like, what can I do for you? Like, I'm your wife. What can I do for you? And he's like, okay, chop off your finger and cook it and serve it to me. And so she does that, and he doesn't eat it. He feeds it to his cat, which I don't like. I don't like that he did that to a cat, but whatever. I don't like that he did that to a cat. And then later he's like, okay, actually, I'm hungry again, and now I'm really hungry. So I want you to cut out your liver and serve it to me. And then so she does that, and then obviously dies. And then, as presented in the story, his quote real wife comes through the door, and they have a nice warm embrace, and that's super duper cool. Both Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons' character in the second part are shown to be kind of lying about stuff, and like, maybe she's a little not super well because of having to eat people. I think that would happen to anybody. He's not super well because he's a bad cop. He like shoots a guy's hand at one point. Crazy stuff. ACAB. You heard it here first. We're big ACAB podcast. But yeah, this one to me felt like the characters were just acting strange for the sake of acting strange. And I had this as a note in part one, but I didn't mention it then. But throughout the whole film, and I think this was something that I had issue with Poor Things as well, but with Poor Things, I think the weirdness and the uncomfortableness, it served a larger purpose, right? Here, it seems a lot of it is just performative, like it's just performatively unsettling. If such a thing is a thing, if it exists, that's what I'm calling it. It's performatively unsettling, and it just doesn't feel earned. It's like, oh, she's a cannibal, then he's a cannibal. Like, wow. And then oh, was it his real wife or not? It's like, no, I think he's crazy. I don't think his wife walked through the door at the end, even though that's what happens in the text. But and I don't think that Yorgos is trying to make it seem ambiguous, but it's just that irritated me. I didn't like it. You know, didn't like it too much, and that's the end of RMF is flying, and so now we're on RMF eats a sandwich, and you'll never guess who's in this one. This one is different in that this one has Hunter Schafer in it. You might have noticed in the trailers or on the posters that Hunter Schafer is like listed as being in the movie, and you might go, like over an hour into the film and go, hey, wait a minute, where the hell is Hunter? She's here for 5 minutes and then is in the movie again, which is a shame. She, I think, plays the only likable character in any of the three parts. So yeah, good for her. Congrats, Hunter. But I said Hideo Kojima is barking. That was my first note. That's because for like a good 20% of her screen time in the what she has is her topless. And yeah, I think Hideo Kojima would have really liked that part. I'm sure when he gets to see this movie, we'll get a lot of tweets from him. So the gimmick of this one. Couple things are different. Well, really, one main thing is that Emma Stone is now like the protagonist of this part. But the other two parts, it's definitely been more of Jesse Plemons. This one's kind of Emma Stone's thing. But in this one, Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons, I think, are like cult buddies. Like they're a cult pair. I don't know if they're like together, like in a sexual romantic way. I mean, not a romantic way, maybe in a sexual way, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. But they're two cult members, and they're looking for, I guess, a woman who is a twin, but one of the twins is dead and of a certain height and certain weight, like very specific requirements for this woman for their cult, with the ability to, if they have these requirements, they can like reanimate the dead, which is what Hunter Schafer's character is in the beginning. She's someone who they are as a candidate for this sort of thing, and Emily Stone and Jesse Plemons are attempting to discern if she's up to snuff, and she's not. And they also have to like, one of the things that they do, which is why Hunter Schafer's topless in the film, is like measuring like the distance between the nipples and then the nipple to the navel, like your belly button, which is very weird. I mean, like, I don't know what that has to do with the other stuff. I don't know. If you can raise the dead, you can raise the dead. Like, maybe you don't really care about the measurement. It's a stupid cult, right? Who cares? But they test to see if Hunter Schafer can raise the dead, and she can't. And so, they're like, all right, well, we'll see you around. And then, Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons go back to the big cult compound where Willem Dafoe is the cult leader, and he has very fun hair. He's got kind of like he's got young man hair, but he's old as hell. He's got a little fuckboy haircut. I think it's very cute. I think it's funny. His doofy little haircut. But Willem Dafoe. That. He's in the movie for sure, but he's the cult leader. I can't tell if the cult leader. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself verbally. The cult in general eats people. Like, it looks like at one point they were boiling organs. I don't know if that was just a me thing. I don't know if the last part having the cannibalism being kind of a feature, I was like, oh, there's going to be more cannibalism just for the sake of being like, ooh, how gross. But if it is or isn't a cannibalistic cult, it doesn't seem like that really makes that big of a difference in the story. So we're just gonna skip past it. I had it as a note, but clearly, uh, who cares? It's not a function of the story like it was with RMF is flying. Um, Maybe the sandwich has people in it that RMF is eating. Who's to say? I don't know. That one's for Yorgos. The next one I note is that you gotta take the piano away from Yorgos because he's doing these again the piano like kind of creepy diddling thing. It was really getting annoying at this point because this part, you know, the second story was a little bit more tense because of like again Emma Stone was chopping herself up and serving it to a man. But here it's just nothing really crazy happens for the most. Well, okay. Um, anyway, so Willem Dafoe is like, all right, well, Hunter Schafer wasn't a good candidate, but I got another candidate, so go and look for it. And that ends up being a wild goose chase, but then Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons meet up with Margaret Qualley's character in this one, who she's like, I have a twin. She's definitely the girl you're looking for, which I thought was weird. I thought it's weird that like the cult is well known enough that like people know what they're looking for a very specific, a woman of a certain characteristic who can reanimate the dead, blah blah blah, with a dead twin. Except of course her twin, the one who she's alive, which we'll get to that later. Meanwhile, and while they're looking for the new candidate, Emma Stone, her character previously was married. She had a kid with that guy, and so she goes in and checks on the kid, kind of like creeps into their house and just kind of like looks at stuff, leaves stuff behind for the kid, blah blah blah. It turns out that the ex husband was abusive, which probably led for her going to the cult in the first place. Later on in the film, Emily Stone is raped by her ex husband, and then she goes back to the cult. Well, the cult's like, hey, you had sex with somebody who wasn't Willem Dafoe, so you're out. You're out of the cult. And then, oh man, guys, I'm just recapping the plot, but this is so it's hard to talk. It's like I because none of you people have watched it. None of you people are knowing what's going on. Um, then she gets kicked out of the cult. Emily Stone then eventually meets up with Margaret Qualley's character. Is like, oh yeah, no, definitely, my sister's the real deal. And so then Emily Stone tracks down the sister who's a veterinarian, so she gets a dog. She cuts the dog, which was a very rude thing to do. I didn't like that. So if I guess reverse spoiler, but definitely if you're not into animal cruelty, um, you know, which I think would be like if you're most people aren't into it, but I didn't like that part. That was you can cut off your finger and serve it to your husband, whatever, but don't cut a dog. That's really heinous, which is why this story's probably at the end. Um, just to really push your buttons, which again, performatively upsetting, right? Like, didn't have to do that. Didn't have to do that. There's other ways of accomplishing that. Then the the dog is healed very quickly from its wounds, and so Emily Stone is like, oh yeah, the vet's definitely the real deal. And then the vet's twin, the one who reached out to Emily Stone in the first place, she's like, so the problem is that you know I'm still alive, right? So she then kills herself by just diving headfirst into a pool that's empty, and she just is dead. And then Emily Stone drugs the vet, and then takes the vet to the morgue where the dead body of RMF from the first story is there. The vet, while unconscious, revives him just by touching him. And then Emily Stone does that stupid dance that you've probably seen in the trailers. That's like the second to last scene in the movie. And then she drives off with her, then gets into a car accident, and then the vet is dead, maybe, or like is if or in an endless loop of dying and reanimating due to her mystical powers, and then the movie is over. And then there's like a mid credit scene where the dead but revived RMF eats a sandwich. And that's it. Those are all the stories from Kinds of Kindness. So I guess overall, right? Again, I've said before, I think the first story is probably the strongest, and it feels like the one that probably was the most thought about beforehand. And it does feel like a dark comedy. It feels it's weird, but not like overly weird, and like the kind of creepy horror-y sort of audio design I think works in its favor as like kind of working against how stupid and silly it is. And I think that works. Like I think it kind of works sort of like how Poor Things works. So Death of RMF I think is cool and funny, and really says something about society, right? You're abused by your employer and you just keep going back to the man. Whatever. Who cares? The second one I think is dumb just because it's like it involves maybe at least more than one person just like kind of going crazy for no reason really, um, or because it seemed like maybe he was Jesse Plemons' character in RMF is flying the second story was already crazy, so it's just don't be crazy and lose your wife. uh, Again, that this one the second one seems the kind of least thought about and meaningful one. The Eats a Sandwich is fine. So throughout all of these, one of the things I wanted to touch on that I kind of put a pin in it earlier. Now we're taking that pin out and talking about it. But Jesse Plemons' character, at least in the first two parts, or not first two parts, the first part and the last part, is like gay with Willem Dafoe, and like I think it's kind of meant to be funny. Like you're supposed to think that's silly, which I think is kind of, and like maybe I'm the problem, but the way that it's portrayed, it feels like it's meant to be silly when it's just like a man's, and not even necessarily in love, just in a weird relationship with another man. It feels a little off, you know. Um, they wouldn't have portrayed it the way that they did if it was a heterosexual relationship, or if it was two women. I don't think they would have done that. So do with that what you will. If anyone has seen the movie and you have thoughts on that specific part, or really any part of it at all, please send an email to badboycinemafanmail@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. But yeah, so that's one thing. Again, the movie is. I was able to describe everything that happened, I would say, relatively fast, with some tangents here or there. But I was able to describe everything happening relatively quickly. And it's not, there's not a whole lot. Those three stories, and I got through each of them in like, maybe 10 minutes. Maybe. And, they're not substantially that interesting plot wise. And it's a lot of like someone standing in a room and looking a little uncomfortable, and then someone's just kind of diddling the piano a little bit, and then something bad happens and you hear the no, and then it's like, oh, okay, cool. I get it. It's weird. It's a little try hard. It's a little try hard for my tastes, but you know maybe you'll like it. I didn't like it, but maybe you'll like it. But it's very like fabricated weird, and it's not like the second part has weird stuff in it. In which case, the fabricated weirdness just sort of feels like overkill, and then like it's just I don't know. It wasn't for me. I don't know. Like Poor Things, right? We've mentioned on the show. Like the first 20 minutes or something are just like kind of like they're really uncomfortable. Not even 20 minutes, honestly, like 30 or 40 minutes are really uncomfortable. And then the movie kind of gets into a groove and then you're locked in. for this one, it's like the whole thing's kind of boring, right? Um, like I think he could have chopped out like 10 minutes from each of the parts, and the pacing would have been better because it really does seem to drag or just kind of belabor these emotional beats of where each of the characters are, right? And of course, the overarching theme with all the characters, to get sidetracked real quick, is everybody's some of them want to abuse you, some of them want to be abused. It's sweet dreams. We're tying it back to sweet dreams, like we brought up at the beginning of the movie, at the beginning of the episode of the podcast. It's about abusive relationships, basically, and the power that people can have over each other. But it belabors these points, and it belabors the emotional, um, you know, turmoil that the characters are going through and why they're doing what they're doing, to a point where it's like, look, we get it, and there's not enough other things going on, right? Like this doesn't have the set design of Poor Things, so you don't have like these cool visual. I mean, it's not like it's a poorly shot film by any means, but it's not like you have these visual kind of aspects to really take in alongside just weird stuff happening. It's just like, oh, this is in L.A., or in a city, right? Like it's not that interesting. It's in a house. Oh, this is a house. It's a lower budget film for sure, and it's fine, I guess. And there's no the overarching theme, right, which we've discussed. It's the abuse, those relationships, those power dynamics, right? That's kind of the threads between each of the three things, and of course RMF just being in all the same guy in all three stories, continuity wise, and I guess that's fine, And there's just people who look identical to Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons and Margaret Qualley, and not Hunter Schafer because she was only in one of the stories, which again was a shame. Was a shame. She should have been. If they had Hunter Schafer in it, I would have bumped it up to a 3. And I'm being generous with like a 2.5 because it is interesting. It's just not. It's just really boring and not well paced, and it insists upon itself. And over the top, like, hey, we're being a little creepy. You're supposed to feel a little unsettled in the theater. So if you're going to check this movie out, I would say watch it at home for maybe by yourself, and have something else going on, so you can check in and go, oh, we're still doing this creepy thing? All right. And then you can go, fold laundry or something. And then, you look up every 5 minutes and something's happening and you can lock in. And then it's like, oh, Jesse Plemons is standing in a room by himself. Okay. He's already done that twice. I get what's happening. We don't need to keep doing this. And then, oh, and then another thing, all the dialogue is delivered, I think, deliberately off kilter, and it's a little stilted. Because it feels like people are talking like robots the whole movie. And I think, these are obviously talented actors who have worked on, half these people were in Poor Things, right? So I don't, I don't think it's like a lack of talent, and I don't think it's a misdirection. I just think it's that was the creative choice, and I don't like it. I think it's just doing something poorly for the sake of, if you're doing something poorly as like a meta thing or as like a stylistic choice, you're usually still doing it poorly. And so I don't think the stilted dialogue adds anything meaningful other than, again, the performative unsettlingness. Like it just feels it's a try hard to creep you out, and it doesn't really do that great of a job even when there's cannibalism. It's just like, oh, okay, you're eating people. Wow. Like at this point, I don't care because you diddled the piano 300 times. You have a song singing no when something bad happens. Like, again, that's supposed to be funny, but it just gets annoying. There's ironic-ish, dark humor, but a lot of it's just kind of, again, I think they're trying to, get you. I've seen reviews for this that say it's laugh out loud funny. I disagree. You'll go, you'll chortle, but you're not gonna laugh out loud. It's not that funny. Maybe this is like for elder millennials. If you're like too Zoomer pilled and like irony poisoned, like this isn't gonna land for you as well. And that's fine. I'm fine if that's the case because that means my brain is bigger than Yorgos L's. But yeah, I think those are sound like final thoughts to me. And we've been recording long enough, so I think I'm gonna end this episode. I don't know what we will be watching next week, so check it out on the Discord when I tell you what it's gonna be. Otherwise, thank you for listening. I sincerely appreciate every single one of you who have listened to the end of this. And I hope you tune in again next week for the next episode of Bad Boy Cinema. I'm your host, Rick Reel, and you'll listen to me next time.